Welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I'm your host, Austin Becker, and this is your home for adventure, travel, addiction, recovery, the outdoor and ski industry, and of course, redemption. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Falling Off the Floor podcast. This week, we have a special guest, Dreama Walton. Dreama and I connected at the Winter Park Film Festival. She recently had a film come out, the Dreama Team, and I had the opportunity to see it. It's absolutely incredible. It just got picked up by the streaming services, which is huge. Huge. So, without further ado, I'll let you introduce yourself and who Dreama Walton is.
Oh, yeah. Well, I guess to start, I'm a mother. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I'm an ultra runner, trail runner. More recently, a podcaster.
Yeah.
Still getting started, and it's just a passion project. My day job is I do IT for radiology, so I work with a lot of hospitals and, software stuff. I have the documentary that just came out. I also have a nonprofit, and one of the initiatives for the nonprofit is a trail running camp that I've started for kids in Colorado Springs.
Amazing.
I guess I do a little bit of it all.
Yeah. That's amazing. What is this camp that you've created for the kids?
Yeah, well, it's focused solely on trail running.
Okay.
But obviously with, young children, because our age range is 2nd to 8th grade.
Okay.
You can't trail run the whole time, right?
Yeah.
So we focus on mindset and confidence building skills. We teach them about protecting our outdoor spaces and leave no trace and leave it better than you found it.
Love this.
But yeah, it's really been very rewarding because there's a lot of things you can take away from running and trail running and bring it over to other aspects of your life. So to be able to learn those early on, I think is pretty cool. And
That's incredible.
So I'm very passionate about that.
Yeah. Is it, so have you integrated it into the schools in Colorado Springs, or is it more like an after school sort of camp?
It's a summer camp.
Okay, cool.
So a 3-day summer camp. 3 days seems to be enough.
Yeah.
I think if we were to do a week, they would be pretty tired. So 3 days is I think the sweet spot.
Yeah.
And it's in the summer. So we're kind of getting the word out through schools, and our coaches, the coaches I have on the team, have their, they're very connected with the community as well. So we're just word of mouth. We went from our first year having 16 kids to our second having 22.
Amazing.
And yeah.
That's really cool. I grew up in a mountain community, and I so wish that I had something like that, because it is a weird aspect, but where I grew up, and even in that film Paradise Paradox, they talk so much about wealth disparity in these mountain towns. Sure. And I was fortunate enough to come from an upper middle class family, and there was kids in my community that did not have that upbringing, and they lived 5 minutes from a ski resort and never skied in their lives, or they didn't have the opportunity or an individual teaching them how to get into the outdoors, or ultramarathon running. That is so cool that you're giving these kids an opportunity.
Yeah, it's actually my motivation for wanting to start it has to do with my upbringing and my childhood. And to give you a little bit of background, when I was 11, my mother she left, and I had 2 younger sisters. So I kind of like took on the role of taking care of my youngest sister and kind of just, being the eldest girl in the family. But my dad ended up marrying a woman who was very abusive emotionally and physically. And so when I was able to escape living with them, I wanted to do something like positive in my life. And all of my friends were playing sports. So I wanted to play a sport, but I hadn't ever played any because of my childhood. And I just decided to walk onto the track team, and they'll take anyone. It wasn't like I tried out or anything. Like track, they'll accept anyone. And it was great because what I found was like a sense of community, a positive environment, both from my teammates, from my coaches, and my teammates' parents. They mentored me, and they showed me that I'm not stuck in that environment that I grew up in. I could actually be better. So I mean, honestly, running changed my life.
For sure.
And I was horrible at it in the beginning. So it wasn't like I got onto the track team and I was great. No, I was really, really awful. But it was the community, and it was having something positive in my life. And it was actually having the coaches and those adults, that my teammates' parents, show me, oh, you're capable of so much more than you think you are. And just showing up every day and to practice and seeing the improvements, all of that built confidence that I didn't have previously.
That's
so I just want to give that back to.
That's so cool that you're doing that. Like I mentioned, growing up in a mountain community, and Colorado Springs is more of a metropolitan city, but then in metropolitan cities you also have that aspect of there's wealth disparity and people that live in bigger cities that Pikes Peak is their backyard, and they have these mountain communities and might never have the opportunity to do these things because there's not someone in their life pushing them in that direction or suggesting it.
And trail running is very much the case. I mean, a lot of people don't even know that trail running is a thing, And so we actually, where we host the camp is in the middle of the city, so that we can reach the kids that don't typically have access to the trails on the west side of town. We definitely have children that attend camp that are used to trails, but we have had, I would say maybe a quarter of the kids that attended camp last year didn't really trail run. They didn't even know it was a thing. And now they know it's a thing, and it is for them too. Trails are for everyone, and we just, we're sharing that.
That's so cool. I personally, I've tried to get into running many times. Running's not my strong suit. I watching your film the other night. I was sitting there what the heck? How does she do this? This is so wild. And it's with any sport. I know people look at me skiing and they're what that what is wrong with this guy? And we all have our things.
For sure.
And for some reason, running's never clicked. When I was living in Maine, I got in this habit of getting up at 6 a.m., have my coffee, go on a 5-mile run, but it never clicked for me. And I've recently found cycling in the last 3 years as my kind of summer cardio, stay fit for the ski season sort of thing. But we'll go and record a podcast on your podcast, and
we'll hike.
We'll hike. I don't know if I'm gonna run up the trail.
No, we'll hike.
we'll go on a cool hike.
Yeah.
So, other than this world of running and podcasting, you mentioned that you're a mother. What has that been like? That was a big portion of your film, was talking about your daughter and the relationship that you have with her. What has that been like still continuing to be an athlete and showing up as a mother. And is your daughter gotten into trail running at all?
No.
No.
No, she's not really a runner
Yeah.
right now. And I don't try to push her in that direction.
Yeah.
She does attend my camp.
Great.
And when she's at camp, she has fun. But she's definitely,
Yeah.
it's not her thing.
Yeah.
And that is okay.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, there are things about running that you can carry over to other aspects of your life. What I've tried to show her is that if you want to be good at something, you have to put in the work.
Yep.
And we talk about this often because she's learning how to play piano, but she doesn't really like to practice piano. And so we have this discussion that, like, do you want to be good at piano?
Yep.
Because if you want to be good at it, you have to put in the work. And that is something I've learned just through running, because when I showed up to that first track practice, I couldn't run around the track without walking.
Yeah.
And now I can run,
100 miles.
100 miles.
There
might be a little bit of walking in there.
Yeah.
But confidently, I can say I can run 60 miles without any walking, you know? And So it takes practice if you want to be good at something. And, you have to put in the work.
Yeah. You sure do. I feel like I talk about this a lot on this podcast. We were talking before the podcast about this film that we're starting, and I haven't shared a lot of details on the podcast because we're not like quite at that point yet. But so much of my life, I feel like I like deal with this like imposter syndrome of like, wait a second, like why, and I'm sure you've felt this, like, why are they making a movie about me? Right. Or something like that.
For sure.
And it's hard to get in that mindset of, whoa, like I actually belong here. Like we practiced, as you were just saying, like we practiced long enough that we got to this point that we can record a podcast and people want to listen to us talk about our lives, which is like, whoa.
That is kind of crazy. Yeah. I still think I have imposter syndrome.
I deal with imposter syndrome on a near daily basis.
Yeah.
And my whole thing is just fake it till you make it. Fake it till you make it. I take on new clients at the business that I'm at times like, I don't know how to do that, but I can hire someone that knows how to do it really well. And like, so I feel like that has been so much of my life, especially like overcoming addiction and working on my mental health, is that I like built up that level of insecurity and no self-confidence that now when I'm actually like doing these exciting things, it's like, whoa, no, I don't deserve to be here. So it's been an interesting place for me to be in.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've felt this as well.
I recently got asked the question, how are you so confident? Like, why? How are you, so sure about things?
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that my confidence comes from a place of knowing that I was able to overcome, like, pretty much, I wouldn't say like the worst upbringing, but there were a lot of struggles, and I did not have adults in my life leading by positive example. So knowing that I was able to escape that and get to where I am today, that has given me like my confidence. Knowing that like I came from pretty, the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
And I was able to crawl out of it and like create my own life and do pretty wonderful things. And I'm hoping to continue that and like sharing positivity and like helping others. And that's where my confidence comes from, is like knowing that I'm like able to help others.
Yeah. And you have overcome a lot of things. You went really in depth in your film, and I texted Josh, who's working on my film. He's directing the film that we're doing, and I texted him and I was like, you got to see this film. Like, this is what we're trying to achieve, is like the vulnerability of like having people like talk about these things that normally, like if you're walking down the street, you're not going to talk to somebody about this about, or sometimes not even like close friends you're going to talk about these things. But then you open it up to the world and you never know the impact it's going to have. I mean, I like immediately texted you after I watched your film and was like blown away, because that is what I appreciate in this life, is like people being vulnerable and sharing that space, because that's truly what saved my life, was when I had mentors and people in my life that like truly were giving me insight and vulnerability that I probably wasn't going to find online or you know, anywhere, except having a mentor show me the way. And I took kind of all the practices that I was taught and flipped them to what I'm doing now. And yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah.
It's been a wild ride. So in the film, you do talk a lot about your family. And, you know, you mentioned earlier how difficult it was with your parents, and someone that was very inspirational to learn about was your sister in the film. Can you tell the audience a little bit about your sister? And
Yeah. When I was 4, she was born. So I'm 4 years older. When she was born with a disease called spina bifida. It is where when the spine is developing in the womb, it at some point stops. And hers happened to be in her lower tailbone. So when she was born, she was a paraplegic. She couldn't move from the waist down.
Yeah.
The doctors gave her 2 years to live. And so, you know, she spent a lot of months in the hospital in the beginning. When she finally came home, it was a big adjustment. I started helping my mother very early on with taking care of her. So like feeding her. At 6 years old, I was actually catheterizing her and disimpacting her, meaning because she couldn't go to the bathroom on her own.
Yeah.
So I was very young doing those kinds of things. But obviously, when you take care of someone like that, and she was my little sister, our bond was very strong. You know, I felt this internal desire to take care of her. And to like be there for her. She was pretty normal mentally, which, you know, was now looking back kind of hard because she knew what she was missing out on. But amazingly, throughout her entire life, she remained herself and was very positive and happy. Like, she was so happy. And, you know, like, I feel like, if I were in that situation, would I have been as happy? I don't know.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like she didn't know what she was missing out on. She would say, I wish I could go outside with you. Or, you know, and my middle sister and I, we would put her on a blanket and kind of like scoot her around the house or carry her around the house from room to room. Sometimes we'd take her outside. In my early childhood, I had horses, and I would take her horseback riding, like
That's
hold her on the saddle.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and you know, she was amazing, and I am inspired by her, like, daily.
Yeah. Having that level of like awareness and being able to be happy, that's a special thing. Like,
she loved to when like people would come visit, and you know, I think probably sometimes it was a little uncomfortable for people. But she didn't care. She was like, hi, come talk to me, you know, and like she just wanted people to talk to her.
Community.
Yeah.
I talk about that all the time. Community is the cure for everything.
Yeah.
And it always puts a smile on my face. Podcasting with people, going to dinners, whatever it may be. Since I was a kid, I've had that want for community. I think it's like ingrained in me, like my bloodline almost. I feel like my whole family is from Spain. My mom's first generation here in the U.S.
Cool.
And that was like a big part of my life growing up, was like community. And I was the same way. Like I loved when people came over. I'd get so excited because I knew it was like every night, no matter what, no matter how busy anyone was, we always had dinner together. That was like an important
At
thing.
10 o'clock?
Sometimes. Sometimes.
Where in Spain is your family from?
Yeah, so his book cover is actually on the wall over there.
Okay.
He wrote a book about his life. But he's from Galicia.
Okay, I don't know that.
It's like the northwestern region of Spain on the coast.
Okay.
Yeah, my grandpa lived this like very, very difficult upbringing. His mother died when he was 2, and his dad left for the U.S. My grandpa was like 10 when World War II started, and no, I guess he was a little bit older than that. He was like 15 when World War II started, and it was very rough for all Spaniards. He watched a lot of people he knew get killed in Spain, and even Americans were coming to help during World War II, help the Spaniards. And he smuggled his way onto a U.S. merchant marine ship and got to the United States and was able to reconnect with his dad in New York City when he was like 17 and started his life here. Had my mom, and yeah, he had a pretty cool and inspirational story, and I think that value that I hold with community and connection with individuals was kind of born out of him. Growing up, anytime I was with my Grandpa Lewis, it was like there was always people from his Spanish club that would come and cooking paellas and
cool. Yeah, I love paella.
Yeah, it was an important thing, and when I look back on it now, anytime I do public speaking or anything, I feel like my main topic is always around community, because it's what saved my life. Like people wrapping me up.
Yeah.
And
same.
Yeah, and it's what if I go a day, sometimes I wake up in my little like studio set up here and go to my computer and I'm working all day, and like 6 o'clock comes around and I haven't said a word to anyone. Like I've just been working and sending emails and editing, whatever it may be, and I'm like, whoa, I start getting like a little twitchy. Like, wait, I need to go like hang out with someone.
Just take a walk.
Yeah. In terms of community, when you went to the military, correct?
Yeah.
What was that experience like for you, and what made you decide to go into the military?
Yeah, so at 16, I joined the track team. I was starting to get mentored by some of my teammates' parents, and they knew that I had recently, I was living on my own at that point.
Yeah.
So at 16, my father and my stepmother said that they wanted to move to Maine, and it was after my stepmother had gotten she removed my little sister from our home. So she sent my little sister to a foster home, and then a few weeks after that, they announced that we were moving from Florida to Maine. And I was 16. I had been under her abuse for 4 years and was pretty much done with it.
Yeah.
Luckily, I was working for this farmer who understood and knew what I was going through, and he recommended that I not go? And I was like, well, Mr. Perry, they're telling me I have to. I'm a minor. He's like, no, you don't. You just need to tell them you're going to turn them into the police for all their drug use and everything. Because they were not just doing drugs out of the home, they were selling them. So we had, I knew lots of names and people coming and going.
Yeah.
So I went back to them and I said, hey, I'm not going to go with you guys. And they're like, yeah, you are. And I'm like, well, if you try to make me, I'm going to have to turn you in to the police. And they were like, oh, fine, you're on your own. And so I bought a travel trailer, and it was an awful, awful travel trailer. Really gross. $700. Yeah. So, you can imagine what $700 will get you.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I didn't want to be in the travel trailer. I wanted to be at school. I wanted to be with my friends. Part of the reason why I joined the track team, I wanted to be with my community.
For sure.
And yeah, I was getting mentored by my friends' parents. They were like, Dreama, we know you're capable of so much. You just have to, you should go to college. You can go to college. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. Like, I don't have money to go to college.
Yeah.
But they planted that, like, seed that, like, hey, you could be more. Like, we know that you could be more.
Yeah.
So college was, like, not an attainable goal for me at the moment.
Yeah.
But the next best thing was the military.
Yeah.
And so I enlisted at 19.
And what branch did you go into?
The Air Force.
The Air Force.
Yeah.
Were you a pilot?
No. I enlisted.
Okay.
Only officers are pilots.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was, again, bottom of the barrel.
Yep.
I came in as a E-nothing is what they like to call it. Basic, airman basic. I went through basic training. I got to my first duty station. I got promoted to airman.
Yeah.
Okay. And then within 8 months of being in the military, I deployed to Baghdad.
Wow.
And I was stationed in the green zone. So, yeah, and I got promoted there while I was there.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
That's... Going into the military, obviously it taught you a lot. I saw you, posted something on your Instagram the other day on Veterans Day, kind of talking about the dichotomy of, a lot of people have issues with the military and the way that governmentally it's run. What were some of the things that you learned in the military that you feel like push you today to be the person that you are?
Well, the military definitely teaches discipline.
Yeah.
Right? That's basically what basic training is doing. It's taking a civilian and within, a month and a half, they turn you into an airman or a soldier or, a Marine. So it teaches you discipline. I think it also taught me more about community because
For sure.
I was surrounded by some really amazing people.
Yeah.
People that had my back, mentored me.
Yeah.
One of them recently, he watched the film.
Yeah.
Master Sergeant Schlesinger.
Wow.
He reached out to me and he was like, I watched your film and I'm so proud of you,
Yeah.
And he's also inspired, which is kind of funny because he was my mentor.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely it teaches you about community. It's complicated, you know. The world is complicated, and you don't have to agree with everything that we do.
Yeah.
And that's okay to not agree.
Exactly.
I think if you are somebody who just falls in line and is like, well, they're right because, I think that is being a little short-sighted because they can't possibly be right about everything. I went to war. I went to Baghdad, and that was under the pretense that there were weapons of mass destruction there. And so when I got there, I thought we were doing a really great thing.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that it was all bad. We did do some good things.
For sure.
But we also probably shouldn't have been there, you know. And
Yeah.
I didn't know that at the time when, you know, I went in the beginning of the war.
Yeah.
Know? So we thought we were there for the right reasons. And
yeah. How times changed.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was that like being in that environment when shit hit the fan?
It was crazy. We got mortared and rocketed often, like several times a week. And when I first arrived, I lived in the palace for a few weeks until the U.S. brought trailers over and they placed them in the back of a friend.
Yes, we do have a little friend. Leonard is pretty well known on this podcast. Okay. This is my cat, Leonard.
Yeah, the U.S. brought in trailers, these white, like very simple, kind of like an office type of trailer that you would see maybe at a construction site.
Yeah.
They brought in those, and that became living quarters for everyone.
Yep.
So, hi.
So, we got a little interrupted there by Leonard the cat. You were mentioning that they brought in these trailers for you guys to stay in and sleep in.
Yeah.
What was the palace you were talking about?
Okay, so the palace was the Republican palace.
Okay.
So that was Saddam's headquarters.
Wow.
And Saddam had... it's very, like, recognizable for Iraqis especially, because the palace had 4 Saddam busts, like, of his, like, from the waist up, of him.
Oh
and they were huge. And they were iron.
Yeah.
They were, when I say huge, I mean, there's a photo, maybe you've seen it, where I'm on a ladder, and I'm like reaching with, so there's an Iraqi insult. If you show somebody the bottom of your shoe, it's like the worst insult. And so,
interesting.
When these busts got removed, because the U.S. removed them from the palace, because this became the CPA headquarters. We don't want Saddam's bust on the, So,
you guys gave him the bottom of the foot.
Yeah, so these 4 busts got removed from the palace, but there was a period where they were just sitting on the lawn. And so people would go and take pictures with them and so forth. But there's a picture of me. I'm on this ladder, maybe like a 12-foot ladder.
Yeah.
And I have my shoe, and I'm like hitting him with my shoe. And I'm not even touching like the chest area.
Oh my God.
So like they were huge.
Yeah. I think we need to get statues made of each other. We'll put them in the front yard of our houses.
Yeah. So,
my God.
Yeah, so that was the Republican Palace. It became CPA headquarters, so the Coalition Provisional Authority was the CPA.
Yep.
That is where Ambassador Bremer, he was the CPA ambassador, like he was the ambassador of Iraq. So he was the boss.
Yeah.
We had General Sanchez, who worked closely with Ambassador Bremer, but Bremer was the government official from Washington. So he was the boss of theater.
Yeah.
So that was our, that's where we worked. That's where we ate. That's where we slept. That became everything. So when we would get like rocket or mortared attacked, we would most likely have been in that building. A lot of times we were in the building, and we would have to go down into the basement and kind of wait it out.
Yeah.
But
so
that was scary. Like, to answer your question, it was really, like, my first few weeks there, I was crying quite frequently in my bed.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And then,
I would be too.
But can I just tell you that humans were so adaptable?
Yeah.
I mean, within the first month, 3 weeks, I would say, I was already used to it. I'm like, oh, we're getting rocketed again.
Yeah.
It became almost like...
Oh my God.
It was like not as scary as you would think.
Yeah.
We were like, it became normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that just goes to show you, like, you know, people who are, you know, in war-torn countries, like it does become normal and you just carry on with your day. Which is crazy.
The idea of like adaptability as a human, I feel like is something that I look back at like my past, and I think like sometimes I'll tell stories here on the podcast and I think to myself, like, was I really doing that?
Yeah.
But like I adapted to being the person that I was when I was in active addiction and like severe mental health issues. I was doing those things without question, and you adapt to the situation that you're in.
Yeah.
When you were a kid, you adapted and figured out how to survive the shitty cards you were dealt. And I think it probably at the end of the day makes us all better people. Like what we go through. Yeah. I always tell people all the time that there's really two paths you can take. It's either you lean into the struggle and maybe as an adult you do the same thing to your own kids, or it's poor me for the rest of your life.
Right.
Or you do the flip and it's like, I don't want anyone else to ever experience what I went through, so let's figure out how we can make a difference.
For sure.
And unfortunately, a lot of people choose the first path, and and I don't blame them.
I know, same.
It's you know, it's tough to find a way out or see the light at the end of the tunnel. I was watching Drew's film again the other night with a friend, and something he was talking about, he used this kind of metaphorical thing when he's coming to the finish of the Leadville 100, everything's lit up and it's super dark outside, and you've been going through the forest in pitch darkness for 50 or 60 miles, and then you just see this beam of light coming down Broadway in Leadville, and he used that, like the light at the end of the tunnel,
for sure,
encapsulated like his entire story.
Totally.
And that light is actually always there. At times it just gets really dim, like really, really dim. And it's just about reaching that light.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done for sure. Yeah. So about the military, building that community, do you think that now, like in your older age, as you've gotten out of the military, gotten older, lived a life, do you think that those experiences of getting bombed and mortared, do you think you've grown because of that? Or
I wouldn't.
Does it have the flip effect that at times you struggle with what was happening?
No, I only, there was one time where I had to pull my weapon. Okay. So, we were in a convoy, 2 vehicles. We were out in town, out in Baghdad, inspecting a building that we were thinking about turning into the human rights ministry. And we were leaving that building. It was a 2-car convoy. And the vehicle in front of us decided last minute that they were getting off at the wrong exit. But we were kind of like on this on-ramp. And they somehow, I don't know how, but they got back on the highway. And so we were alone. And we were going up this on-ramp. There was a market to the right. Traffic is just crazy there. And especially without a government, you're like, people just, it's a free-for-all.
Yeah.
So traffic is crazy. There's a market and people off to the right of me. And the driver of the vehicle said, "Hey, you watch the right, I got the left." And I didn't think anything of it. We had been in traffic many times before.
For sure.
I'm just looking. I'm looking at the market.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I see an Iraqi policeman run by me. And I'm like, oh, where's he going? And I turn, and as I turn, he grabbed an Iraqi man who had an AK-47, and he was popping it off in the air. So he was shooting the gun, he had it like that, and he was like firing it off, and I was like, oh my God. And the captain I was with, he was like, lock and load, and I was like, oh my, like I was shaking so bad, because I never wanted to be in that situation. Like,
for sure.
It was like, I had been trained, but did I ever really think I was going to have to be in it? I guess no. I thought, like, up until that point, things had gone pretty smoothly. I didn't think I would ever have to. But when I got back to post, and I just broke down.
Yeah. Oh,
I
man.
cried.
I would have as well.
And a few times talking about that story after, I felt like my voice get shaky, and I kind of felt like this maybe PTSD.
Yeah.
But I haven't really had, to answer your question, the rockets and mortars and all of that, like none of that has affected me in a negative way.
That's amazing.
And I don't really think about it much, so
yeah.
I guess not in a positive way either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's almost like a past life.
Yeah.
You know, it was something you experienced, and you learned from it, and you grow, and you learn to have opinions one way or another about it.
For sure.
I think people, especially people that have never been in the military, are very quick to like judge the military based on governmental things.
Sure.
And I think I've got my own opinions about it. But for example, my roommate in Maine, we were living together for years, and it's a kind of sidetrack, but when I was watching your film and you were talking about Maine, I was like, it was kind of a cliffhanger, and then you guys talked about that you didn't go to Maine, and I was like, no way, Dreama lived in Maine too. And then I was like, okay, this makes sense. But yeah, like my roommate in Maine just comes into the house one day and he goes, I'm gonna go be in the Marines and be on a submarine. And now, like 6 months out of the year, he gets put on a sub and he goes underwater, and you can't talk to him for like 6 months at a time, and they go. And I just saw him at a wedding 2 weeks ago in Maine. He was able to get leave and come to the wedding, and like the transformation that he's had. And he went into it with a very positive mindset and still has a very positive mindset about it. He's just like focused, and I think he was like lacking that drive of like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next, and decided I'm going to do the military. And I think it's like pushing him in this awesome direction.
Yeah, I think what the military gives you in community is, I haven't experienced it in any other time in my life.
Yeah.
Like the sense of community, the mission of like working towards something together, like having that mission, and feeling like you really are like one team. Yeah. Even if your political views don't align, like those are like your brothers and sisters. For sure. And the pride too that you have for your country, like, I mean, again, doesn't mean I have to agree with everything, but I love my country. I love I love this beautiful like land that we have. I mean, and the people too, and it's really special. Like
the program that I got sober at, their whole tagline was the foxhole. That's what they called it. Okay. And the whole ideology came from this idea that when people are like fighting mental health and addiction, you're like literally, now your life's on the line. Like literally every single day you wake up and you're pulling the bottle, sticking the needle, whatever it may be, you're fighting for your life like literally every day, and you have no idea when too much is going to be too much. And when you got into this, the name of the program was Foundation House, but the like tagline was the Foxhole. And that was their whole program, like building that community and like accountability. And there's like a famous graduation speech about ringing a bell. I think it's the Marines or Navy.
Oh, no, I know. I've
guys,
seen it.
Yeah, and if
really
you ring
good.
the bell, you tap out.
Yeah.
So when you walk into the offices at Foundation House, they have this huge bell, and everyone knows you do not ring that bell. And if you do, it's like no questions asked. You're out of the program.
Wow.
Like if you ring it, you are done.
Wow.
You have tapped out on your brothers.
Yeah.
And they really instilled that like lifestyle of like accountability, and you're like watching out for these people.
Right.
And because it really is at that point, once you get to that point that you find yourself in rehab and you're literally barely alive,
Yeah.
you have to like watch out for the people around you and build this community. And obviously we're not getting shot in mortars and stuff, and it's different, but I think that ideology is why that program is so successful. I had gone to 22 inpatient rehabs
Wow.
before that, and all around the country, and I got told about this place from my aunt that lives here in Denver, actually, and I ended up at that program, and it was so against the grain of everything that they say in the industry you need to do with, like, drug addicts and alcoholics, and it totally saved my life.
Wow.
And it was all based on, like, kind of, like, military ideology of, like, community, watching out for people, accountability,
Yep.
waking up on time, making your bed correctly, if that sheet is not tucked perfectly.
Totally. So you know how to tuck
Yeah.
it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So,
Cool.
you know, it's obviously different, but I have always had this respect since going into that program for the military that it really is about like building community. And in your situation that you found yourself in Baghdad, like when you were sitting in that convoy, you were trusting everyone in that car to protect you, and they were trusting you to protect them. And like, that's a special thing.
For sure.
A very special bond that I don't think many people will ever experience.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still friends with the people I was deployed with.
Yeah.
And, yeah, it's crazy, like, to see their families now and our lives, like, continue.
Yeah.
After.
Do you think the military and, like, that discipline has helped you in your ultra running? That mindset of you can get the extra mile, you can get the extra 10 miles and keep going?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just the military. I think also the struggle, you talked about struggle earlier, kind of like almost being a positive, right? Because it shapes us, it molds us into who we are. I think that my strength comes from overcoming all of the shit I had growing up.
Yeah.
Like, that's where my strength and my confidence and knowing that, like, yes, I can go the extra mile. I can keep pushing. I can go one step further. Just, you know, like, as cliche as it all sounds, like, all of that has made me who I am today. And you talk about, like, that struggle being kind of, like, almost a strength, right? Because, like, I feel like I'm a warrior.
Yeah, you are.
And there are people who even, you know, my middle sister, she is still struggling today with addiction. And, but, like, so, you know, we've had very different lives, and I think part of the reason why is because I feel like I'm a warrior and not a victim.
Yeah, you sure are.
Thank you.
I think I don't know if I used warrior, but after watching your film, I was like, that is a badass woman right there.
Thank you.
And yeah, that idea of going the extra mile, not many people on this planet do that. Like, there's a level of comfortability in life that people are okay with, and when it gets too uncomfortable, it's like, I'm just gonna stop.
Right.
And my mentor drilled this into my head, like, day in and day out. He would always tell me, like, if you don't get comfortable being uncomfortable, you're fucked.
Totally.
Like, totally fucked.
Yeah.
And I try and keep that in my head, like on a daily basis, that, you know, I'm sitting there with these guys that want to make this film, and like at times I'm like, whoa, this is like an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
But how am I going to grow and learn without sitting in that uncomfortability?
Yep. Absolutely.
It's like you have to sit in it, and instead of backing out and being like, I don't have the skills for this, I don't have the strength for this, I can't go the extra mile. If you just sit in it for a second, it actually becomes a little less uncomfortable.
For sure.
Yeah.
And like, honestly, I mean, you kind of touched on it, like, growth doesn't happen when you're comfortable.
No. Never.
Think about it. Like,
never.
It never happens when you're, you have to push yourself outside of the comfort zone. You know what? A good example, last night. Yeah. I went to this event that I got invited to because I have a nonprofit. Yeah. And part of being invited to the event was to get up and speak to a room of 80 people.
There you go.
About my nonprofit. Yeah. And I was so nervous. Like, I am not good with, like, a whole crowd of people just looking at me. Yeah. My voice cracked, and I told them, I'm like, hey, I'm pretty nervous. But I'm going to keep going. And I kept talking about my nonprofit and, like, our mission and why, the motivations behind it. And, I'm sure at times that my voice was a little cracky. Yeah. But I kept pushing through, and, like, I won it. Like, I won the donation that I went for. And, like, amazing. Yeah. And so the whole room of people, even though I was, like, super scared and I was not comfortable in that situation, it was beneficial. Like, not only did I, like...
You're a human.
I know.
Yeah.
I wish I were more comfortable public speaking, but...
You know, I wish I was too. I've done quite a bit of public speaking now, and it gets a little bit easier. Okay. But I still look at, like, people like Drew who do a ton of public speaking. So good. Yeah, and it flows so naturally. Yeah. And for me in particular, I like flow, but I find myself thinking about, I'll flow for a second, and then I'm like, oh shit, that's a lot of people. Okay, back to it. Like, here we go. Yeah. And look, you were uncomfortable, and then you won.
I know. You won donation for my nonprofit.
That is incredible.
I know.
Wow. Yeah. So with your nonprofit, is that taking in money from donors? Is that how you provide the things like the camp? So is the camp, just for listeners, is the camp free for kids to attend?
Well, no. We do charge.
Yeah.
But if there are families who cannot afford to pay, that is where, like, the nonprofit comes in.
Okay.
And about half of the kids last year were scholarship.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And then, you know, we don't charge a lot. It was under $300 for 3 days, so about $100 a day. But they get a free pair of Hokas. They get Hoka shoes, t-shirts, water bottles, sunscreen. Like, we have the best sponsors. So they
People
get all
just
of that.
Helping out.
Like, honestly, what we give them would equate to, like, $400, you know, $450.
Yeah.
So they're definitely, like, getting a good deal.
Yeah.
And, like, the best coaches too. We have amazing coaches and staff. So
how big has the team gotten now?
Well, we have 4 primary coaches. Okay. And then about, like, last year we had 12 volunteer coaches. Okay. And then a few staff that, like, man the food and, you know, make sure they're washing their hands before they grab anything. Yeah. I don't know, just, like, little stuff like that. We had 2 med staff.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Awesome. I feel like I want to go to this camp now.
A lot of people. Lots of adults are like, when are you going to put one on for adults?
Yeah, exactly. I think I think I could get into running. I'll go to the Dreama camp,
yeah.
do some running.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
Put me in, coach.
Yep. I'll remember that.
So, with this podcast, we do this every episode. It's something that we do in what we would call the halls of Alcoholics Anonymous.
Okay.
But at the end of a meeting, they ask the room, do you have any burning desires? And that's essentially, it opens up to the room and it gives anyone the opportunity to say like one last piece, something that's on their mind. Usually when I ask people this, it's like, what's the last thing you want to leave with the audience? A little tidbit, something you've learned, anything.
I would like to remind the audience that we're all human. We all have struggles.
Yep.
It's totally normal.
Yep.
But I think the difference in how the quality of your life is whether or not you look at those struggles and tackle them with a positive mindset or a negative one.
Yeah.
I think if your outlook is positive and you just take on that struggle as just something that is, it doesn't have to have a lot of meaning. It just is what it is. Move forward. I think you can, I think life can be just a lot easier.
Yeah.
Like, we don't have to put so much weight on things that we've done in the past or mistakes we've made, or, if things aren't going perfect in your life, like, that's okay. Like, it isn't going perfect in anyone's life. And, like, if people, say they have, the perfect life, I seriously doubt it. Like, there's something going on.
Yeah.
And that's totally okay. Just, keep moving forward.
Yeah.
And that's what we say in the documentary is, like, just keep moving forward. Don't, put so much weight on what has happened in the past.
Love it. Love it. And one last question that I have for you. Where did the name Dreama Team come from for the film? And I wanted to mention the name of the film for the audience, too. You're on Apple,
Google, Amazon, DirecTV, lots of other. I know.
What?
Everyone but Netflix.
Yeah, it can be tough.
Yeah.
It can be tough.
Dreama Team. Okay, so when I established my crew for Western States 100.
Yep.
Which the documentary, kind of weaves that race into my story.
The timeline.
Yep. The timeline. I called my crew the Dreama Team.
Love it.
Because they were my team.
Yeah.
But when the filmmakers were creating, so Chad Weber and Steve Vanderhyde are the filmmakers of Dreama Team. When they were creating the film and it turned from a 12-minute short film into a feature length, they were like, well, this is what we want to name it.
Yeah.
Dreama Team. I actually didn't like it.
Oh.
But I didn't have, I mentioned, I was like, hey, does it have to have my name in it? And then they told me their reasoning behind it was, part of my story is that community, right? It's not just about me. It's about having the whole team and play on my my name, which I had hippie parents that named me Dreama. We might as well use it to our advantage. And so Dreama Team is I think there's a multiple meanings to it.
Yeah, I loved it. So whatever thought that you had, I think most people think it's really cool.
Okay.
And it, again, ties back into that whole community thing. We can't do this alone.
No.
Everyone is struggling, like you said. Some people are better at hiding it than others, but everyone's going through something.
For sure.
There's never a moment in anyone's life that there's not something going on that's bringing you down. And sometimes feels like it's all bad. And that, like we were saying, like the light at the end of the tunnel gets really dim, but
for sure.
it's still lit up.
Yeah, and if you think about what's happening in the world right now, if the weight of the world doesn't cause a little bit of struggle in your life,
Yeah.
then maybe you're not paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a lot
scary.
of bad things happening.
Yeah.
It's around the planet.
Scary world.
Yeah.
Scary world at the moment.
Yeah.
Well, Dreama, such a pleasure hosting you on
you.
the Falling Off the Floor podcast. I was looking forward to doing this for a while, and I'm glad we were able to connect and do this. You can get me to do a little jogging uphill. We'll do a little hiking.
Yeah.
We'll get
We'll
mic'd
just
up.
hike.
Yeah.
It's actually more fun for me if we just hike because I have to carry a camera.
Oh, true.
I have to edit out the breathing.
I'll blame it on you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll blame it on you. Yeah, she said she doesn't want to run.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
she didn't want to run. It has nothing to do with me not wanting to run. Yeah,
it really does.
Yeah. Well, thank you to the audience of Falling Off the Floor. Episode, I think this is 31 now.
Cool.
Episode 31 with Dreama Walton. We are out.
Thank you.